Hey everyone, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sublimation graphics and tutorials here on Facebook. If you're joining us on YouTube, please be sure to come join our Facebook group where all of our videos air live before they're added to our YouTube channel unedited. And of course, if you're catching us live on Facebook, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Those links are in the video description depending on where you're watching. This morning's Sublimation Sunday tutorial is on golf divots. Now, I didn't even know what these were or that they even existed until I saw Single J Sublimation offering them a few months back. I bought them because my grandfather is an avid golfer. He and my grandmother spend half of their year in Florida and the other half in New York, and he gets in as many golf days per year as he possibly can. This is his one true joy, and I absolutely love giving him personalized items that he can use for his golf game, and all of his friends are usually pretty jealous. So I've done golf towels, I did a tumbler last year, but I've never done divots. So I was really surprised to find that golf ball markers sells for anywhere between $10 and $30. So the $10 ones are really generic, super basic metal, nothing special, no engraving, no personalization, no nothing. And then the $30 ones that I found were the ones that were just like your standard aluminum or steel, and they could have been engraved. And they were all right around this size. So these are $5 each currently at Single J Sublimation, and the link is in the video description. My sales tactic for these would be to sell two for $25. They're only going to cost you $3 or $4 to ship, and you can even package them in a nice little gift box and put them in a bubble mailer to really help drive up that overall appeal and value to your customer. You can, of course, if you're selling at vendor fairs, just stick them back in their little baggies. I personally would probably choose a new baggie that didn't say Made in China on the top. That's just my 2 cents about that. But then you can easily hang them on display for people to browse through and grab. These are also really quick. If you have any size heat press, you can probably do a minimum of 15 of these at once. Each little disc is a little over an inch. You can see in the back there, we're going to take that out. That's our aluminum disc that we'll remove the film on, and then we'll sublimate our picture on. But you could do monograms, you could do pictures, you could do business logos, really anything like that. And business logos is a really smart idea because a lot of bigger corporate businesses have golf events that they sponsor and their teams are part of. So just another idea for a way to promote these and pitch them as a really high quality custom product that you are able to make. So the profit margins on these are great, and the ability to sell them is present all year round. Not only are they great for Valentine's Day gifts for him and or her, and Father's Day and Mother's Day, they're great for graduations, weddings, and of course Christmas. So lots of versatility with this particular item, and something that is fast and profitable and so easy to put together. So we're gonna just print 2 of these today, and we'll do our measurements really quick because we always want to double check that disc size so we can make sure that we have this sized accordingly in our software. We will set up our design in Affinity Designer, print it on our Workforce 7710, and then press it on our EnduraPress SD20. So let's go ahead and flip this around and get those measurements and get started. All right, I'm just going to use a ruler for this. If you guys don't have a stash of wooden rulers, I highly recommend grabbing them. They're like 50 cents at Walmart, and I use these wooden rulers a lot, especially because they have a nice little plastic edge here. It's a little hard to see, but I use these little ones a lot just for small objects. They're much more convenient than rolling out a tape measure. So we've got our little disc. As I said, they come in the bags with your golf divot. And go ahead and line it up. You always want to be focusing on the widest area, which is across that middle. And it looks like we're right at a perfect 1 inch. So that will be very easy for us to set up our design. Let's pop over to Affinity Designer. We are going to be setting up our design to print in Affinity Designer on a Windows PC. the Mac version is nearly identical, so the steps you follow will be the same. If you are interested in learning everything there is to know about Affinity Designer, then check out our Affinity Designer Digital Graphic Design Masterclass. This is a 100-hour in-depth, learn at your own pace video course that is perfect for beginners and those with some experience alike. The course takes you through all of the tools and how to utilize them, and then also dives into designing specifically for different substrates and objects that you might do within the sublimation industry. This course is great for anyone who's diving into graphic design, whether you want to just feel confident making custom edits for your audience, or if you are trying to do everything from the ground up, you will find plenty of value in this course. It is available at a $30 discount when you use the group code SUBTHAT, and you will find the link in the video description below. We will go ahead and start by clicking on File, New, and we want to select the Print tab and choose the print page size that we are going to be printing on. This is the very first number one step that you always do when you are getting ready to print your file. You choose the best size paper for what you are printing. Now, our golf divots disc that we just measured was only 1 inch, so we really don't need anything big. I'm going to stick with the letter size page because it's the smallest one I currently have. You could even choose to cut it in half if you wanted to, or do what I do, which is typically if I am just printing something small, I will add some other type of design onto my page so that I can maximize the area that I am printing on. And if I, for some reason, can't add a design that I need on the other half of the page, then I always save the rest of the page to use for nozzle check paper. So a few different options so that you don't end up wasting too much of your paper on a small item like this. For sublimation printing, your color format should always be RGB/8 and your color profile should be sRGB IEC 1966-2.1. Keep in mind that your ICC profile is based on your ink, particularly with your printer, and those settings are set in your printer properties. They are not set in your document setup. They have literally nothing to do with your document setup. Document setups are universal. Your print settings are not. Your print settings will always be dictated by your printer, ink, and the paper. So we can go ahead and select Create, and our document has appeared. This will be very easy. We are going to start by selecting our ellipse tool down here in the corner. I will zoom in since this is going to be a little hard to see. And then you will simply click and drag on your mouse, holding that mouse key down to create your first ellipse. We don't want this to have any kind of fill, so I'm going to come over here to my color panel, and where that filled circle is, I'm going to choose no fill. And where the outline is, I'm going to leave the black outline for right now. I'll just add a little bit of stroke so we can see it, and that's just it. It's just so that we can see it while we get everything lined up. Down here, we'll select our transform panel, and we will manually enter in our measurements, making sure that our aspect ratio is unlocked. So when it's locked, you've got brackets like this. When you click on it and it's unlocked, no brackets. So we did measure this, and it was 1 inch. We could actually do 1.1 just so we have a little bit of a border to work with. If for some reason your document is not in inches, I did not show you this, I'll just bounce back really quick. You can go to File and then Document Setup, and you can change your document units here. And that was also in the setup panel that we were just on. If you want to use millimeters or centimeters or whatever works for you, those options are there as well. So we have our little circle here, and this is going to be the size of our disc, and we want to fill this with whatever design we're going to use. So I'm just going to use a turtle. So I will select my Place Image tool, and I'm going to grab this sea turtle that I purchased from Debbie Does Design Co. This is her cute little sea turtle that she drew, I think, last year. So I'm going to get him nice and centered. I don't want him to be too big because I don't want him to get cut off or anything. And I want him to look you know, like he fits nicely. It's a misconception that you should make something as big as your space is, because often when it's as big as your space is, it does not look like it is the right size. And even though the boundary box of him was telling me he's centered, I just moved him down a little bit so that his body is actually what looks more centered. Now these are pretty small, so I don't want to get too crazy putting a lot on here, because 1 inch is tiny, and my grandfather, you know, he's older, much like many of your grandfathers, and he can't see the greatest. But I am going to go ahead and add some text. So I'll grab my ellipse tool again and stretch that out. Come over here to my transform panel. I'm going to set it at 0.75 and 0.75. I am going to move it so that it is centered. There we go. So you see the green and red axis lines, that lets us know that we are centered with the outer circle that's there. If you don't see those lines, you simply need to select the magnet icon on the top of your workspace. So with this selected, zoom in a little bit more, I will choose my artistic text tool and I will simply click on the line. And this is going in the opposite direction I want it to, so I'm going to reverse text path, that little loop back icon there. Your green is your start point, your red is your end point. I'm going to drag this until I am locked by the center line. So see that little red line that appeared? It's really small, it's at the tip of my cursor, but it is there. And then I'm going to bring the red one, the end point, to the other directly across so that my text will actually be half, and I can add 2 lines if I want to. I don't think that'll be necessary, but so I'm just going to put, well, I guess we could do 2 lines, you know, because this text is going to be really small. So what I'm going to do then is get rid of that. So we'll do property of, we'll select our text. I'm going to bring this down to, let's try a 10. And I'm just going to choose a really simple, easy to read font. I'll go with Oswald Regular. Let's do Oswald Light. And I want this to be centered between, you know, on this top half of the circle. So we can just choose a line center, and it's going to line it between that start and end node that we have there. So then if I hit enter, it's going to create a new line, and I will put the name, and we will move our anchor points for this as well. So our end point is this red right here. We will take that and line it up with our top end point, and our green one almost blends in with the turtle there, but it is there. And we'll put that one there. So it is aligned center. And all we need to do is modify the baseline. So you see this baseline option in our context toolbar. We will select that and the slider. And as we slide it out, it's going to bring our text out. Now, there's no specific percentage that you go with. I pretty much eyeball it because it depends on the font. Some fonts will look like they're perfect at 75%. Others will look good at 50%. We're really looking for even spacing on the top here and the bottom, and also that our letters look like they are spaced evenly as well. So we have our text there all ready to go. Pretty simple. I will just select that and make sure we are all the way on black. Good. And I don't really want to add any kind of background to this. You could choose to if you want, but because it's so small and that cute little turtle is there, I don't really want to add too much extra. Maybe just a couple little bubbles so that he doesn't look quite so lonely. We can do this really easily with our ellipse tool. So I'm going to grab that again. I'm going to create a circle. This one doesn't have to be perfect, but I am going to make mine perfect because I'm just fussy like that. So let me zoom in on that so you guys can see what we're doing. All right, so with this one, I want to select my open circle there and choose no fill. I want to select my filled circle, and I'm going to give it a really light blue color as my fill. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select my transparency tool, and I'm just gonna click and drag that across there. I'm gonna come up to my context toolbar and choose radial. And then I want to reverse the gradient. Here we go. And I'm gonna bring this out to the edge and bring this into the middle. And this little tiny line, I know it's hard to see, but I'm gonna drag it all the way down so that I have a nice outer edge with a transparent middle, basically creating like a bokeh bubble. And if you're wondering, this is exactly how bokeh brushes are made. All right, so I have one little bubble there. I will duplicate that and make a nice smaller one. I'm gonna come down here to my transform panel, lock that aspect ratio. I'm gonna do this one 0.05 so that it's really tiny. And I'll sort of offset it so they're overlapping there. And we can just click and drag to select those, right click and duplicate, choose to move them to the front and bring them over here, rotate them. And then I'm just going to duplicate a couple more. So I'm going to select that small one and right click and duplicate, which can be Control or Command J. And this one I'll make even smaller. So I've got a really tiny one there. Sort of make it like it's coming out of his mouth there. And I just duplicated a third. And we can put another little one over here. And, you know, just select the ones that you want to duplicate. So I'll click and drag those and duplicate. And maybe move them. Oh, let's kind of move them up over here. And I'll also just drag that corner to make them just a hair bigger. All right. That way they do kind of look like they're coming from his mouth. I'm just going to select that whole group there, and I will right click and duplicate or Control or Command J. I'm going to sort of bring it down here, and I'm going to separate them. Just move them around. And we'll do the same thing over here. I'll select those, right click and duplicate, sort of bring them up here and separate them out. This one I think we could make a little bit smaller. Let's do the 0.075. Keep making them a lot bigger than I need to. That's good. And I'm just going to grab these small ones that we did, and I'm going to right click and duplicate them as well and move to front. When we move to front, we're just trying to group all of those ones together to make it easier when we're trying to find stuff later on. And I will just move them around. Okay. So as you can see, that was a pretty simple design that we just threw together. Now, if you add a background fill to yours, then you do not need to have any kind of a stroke outline because you'll be able to use that fill as your guide to make sure that everything is centered and your little disc is in the correct spot. If you don't, like we don't, then you do want to select your circle and just make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to select that circle and I'll lock my aspect ratio, and I'm going to change this to 1.25. 1.125, which is going to make it just 1/8 of an inch bigger than what we had it as. And I will simply get that back centered there. And then I'm going to group everything inside of my circle. So this is going to print this outline for me so I have it as reference. But if you end up filling in yours with a background and you don't want to have this print, then you will come over to your color panel, select that open circle, and choose the no fill option. So as I said, I do want mine to print because we have a white disc and we're not doing any kind of a background on here. Next, we just want to go ahead and you can group everything together, or you can clip all of your layers into your circle. So I like to just clip them. If you hold down your shift key and select the top and the bottom layer, it will select everything in between, and then simply drag with your mouse so that the cursor is touching the name of the layer that you would like to clip into, release, and now everything will be inside. Oh, we missed a bubble. So we'll just drag that one in as well. All right, there we go. So that is a one-step clipping feature of Affinity Designer. Super easy to use. I'm a big fan. Okay, and now all that's left to do is just duplicate this so we have a few. So we will right click and duplicate, and you don't need to space them out super far. A little bit of spacing is fine. I'm actually going to add 4. That way my grandfather can keep 2 in Florida and take 2 back home to New York. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a lot of paper space to waste for something like this. So options are you can add in some other designs that you need to print for other projects, or if you want to make something for yourself, if you happen to sell transfers, this is a great time to just print some extra transfers and keep them on hand. You can also just save that other half of the paper so that you can use it for nozzle check paper, which is what I'm going to do today. So I just have these, and I will select my alignment panel and just make sure that I have them aligned middle based on the selection bounds. And then I'll put them in the middle of the page as well, because I just really like things centered in the middle of the page. All right, so next we will go to File and then Print. We need to choose our sublimation printer. Mine is the Workforce 7710. And then you will click on the Properties button, and this is where you will choose all of your settings based on your ink. So if you have special profiles that you need to use, or if you have special settings based on your ink and paper, all of those would be selected in there. I have mine preset to make my life easy. So mine is right here. You do want to print mirrored for this as well. So then we just hit OK and OK again, and it is going to send it off to print. Let's go ahead and unpackage these really quick. Now each one has a 3M sticky adhesive right here. And then the disc does come in its own little baggie. Now these discs have a film on them. If you sort of kind of roll your finger along the edge so you can see it peeling up right there. There we go. Make sure you take it off. I already made the mistake of not taking it off on my first try of these. So aluminum doesn't always have film on it, but many times it does. And it is usually pretty easy to get off. I usually just nudge it with my nails. If you don't have nails, consider using a ingrown hair tweezers. Those are also really great. So these bags that they come in are resealable. So that's also nice because, like I said, you can stick them right back in here. Me personally, I would just put something over that Made in China sticker. Or you can simply gift wrap them. Gift boxing them is just another way to drive up the value of them. Make people feel like they're getting a bit more bang for their buck. All right. And I'm just trying to get that film off while our printer is printing. I'm sure you guys can hear it in the background. So as I mentioned before, selling these in sets of 2 is probably the best strategy to help you get the most profit out of these. This is a gift, so I'm not too worried about that. But I would definitely sell them in sets of 2. Just a little bit more value, especially when you can meet the same price point that other people are doing. And I mean, again, you can print however many you can fit on a page, honestly. So you could really be printing 15, 20 of these at a time. So bulk orders would be awesome for this kind of item because you'd be able to make a substantial profit in a short amount of time. I'm having a little trouble getting this last film off. All right. If you ever have film that's just really stubborn, a little trick is just to hold it against the heat press for like 2 seconds, and it will warm it up just enough to allow you to get it off. All right. I'm just gonna throw these away since I am not planning on using those. All right, I've got I just cut it off since it's so tiny. My page printed from my Workforce 7710. All right, so all we need to do now is tape on our pieces, smooth out of the way, bring our heat tape over. And we're just gonna take each one and center it right in between that outline circle that we made. And then when we have it where we want it, we will grab one of these and stick it right on there. You could do 2 pieces if you want, it doesn't really matter. All right. Get our next one centered. Add a piece of tape. Oops. That one wasn't quite as centered as I wanted it to be. Let's try that again. And we're doing these white side face down, metal side face up on our face up from our transfer. It is a little harder to see around a camera. Okay, so you can see, hopefully you can see. All right, see how they're right in that center there of our boundary line? I know it's a little hard with the light glare. I'm just gonna double check these really quick and make sure they are all where I want them to be, because I do want them to be perfectly centered. This is where having a fill actually does come in handy, by the way. All right, I think we're good. Okay, over here on our heat press, we are going to be using 390 degrees for 50 seconds. Now the recommendation from Single J's is to do 60 seconds at 400 degrees. But every supplier, the time and temp that they give you is just that. It is a recommendation based on their testing and their equipment. You might not have the same equipment that they have. So it's important for you to know your own heat press and adjust your time and temperature accordingly for that or for your paper. Now I'm using Printer Jack ink high release paper. This is my preferred go-to paper, and because it is high release, it typically needs anywhere between 10 and 25 seconds less on certain substrates. So I've had plenty of testing with mine to know how to adjust it, and if it's you, then you need to test yours and make the adjustments as well. For aluminum, I always do my aluminum. Let me lower you guys so you can actually see something. Sorry about that. Okay, so I always do my aluminum transfer facing up, blank facing down. So sort of the opposite of what you normally do. I'm just gonna get a little piece of masking paper here. Since this is small, we don't really need a lot. And we want to have medium firm pressure. So I always find that aluminum does best face down. Some suppliers recommend it face down, others don't. Sometimes it depends on the blank itself and the thickness. But for me, doing aluminum with your transfer face up and your product face down, as well as ceramic, has always proved me best. So sort of the opposite of what you normally do. So because we're doing that, we do want to put paper on the top and bottom so we don't end up with any ink transfer. We'll get that in where we want it. And we'll go ahead and press that on down. Like I said, I'm doing 390 degrees for 50 seconds. That's based on my heat press, which runs a little bit hotter, and the fact that I'm using high release paper from Printer Jack ink. I have the blue formula, that's the old formula. Some people have an issue with the blue formula curling in high humidity zones. I personally have not had that issue, even though I do live in a high humidity zone. But I do like to mention that the pink formula is the new formula, so you can always give that one a try if you don't want to have to risk that. So it's available on Amazon. That's where I purchased it, as well as my ink. It's also where I purchased my printer. The Workforce 7710 is no longer being manufactured at this point, so unfortunately you can't get this specific printer. All right, we've got just a few more seconds here. So once this is done pressing, you will simply pull it up. Some heat gloves is always a good idea. And then pull off each of your little discs. Aluminum tends to cool pretty quickly, so you don't really need a ton of time. But let me try and get that out of a glare for you. Oops. You can see there we go. Camera's focusing now. There is our little golf disc. So I'm going to bring them all over. Oh yeah, they're still a little hot. So let me grab each one, bring it over here off of the heat press. It'll cool a lot faster off of the heat press. Just take our little pieces of tape off. Ouch. Try not to burn yourself. Now back over here. Oh yeah, these are about cool now. So all you're gonna do is take each one of your divots and you're going to peel off the white cover on the adhesive that's here. This is 3M adhesive, so it is meant to be relatively permanent. And if you're ever concerned, you can always use E6000. And then you're just going to line up your little divot. I wanna make sure that mine has the text straight. There we go. Give it a really good hard press. And there we have it. Let's do our next couple of ones here. So we peel off that white sheet. We grab our disc, make sure it's nice and straight. Get it in there nice and centered. And then give it a nice hard press. Now the discs fit perfectly in there, as you can see. There you go. which is great because sometimes the discs or like rubber bottoms, sometimes there's extra space. And then if you get it off by just like a tiny little bit, you end up with it being not centered, which is very frustrating and annoying. All right, and our last one. And as I mentioned, you could always choose to use E6000, but I've never had an issue with anything that has the 3M adhesive coming apart or falling off. It is considered, you know, the best in its class and whatnot. So give it a nice good press. And there you have it. So I have got this great little set of 4. If you did want to sell them in sets of 4, then I would probably aim for a $45 price point. So you'll have not even $21 in your overhead materials costs. And truthfully, if you were doing these in bulk, this is a project that would only take you maybe 5 minutes start to finish. So very fast, especially if you're considering looking at, $25 in profit. So if you look at it like that you can be making about $20 to $25 for every 5 minutes that you've spent. That's a pretty profitable hour in business. So definitely a great item to push. Like I said, all year round, great for really any occasion, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays for him and her, and of course, Christmas. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.